Kevin's going to watch our agenda time for us. All right, so before we get started, Krista's going to run over our public comment norms.
Yeah, so if you have a comment, we're going to keep the public comment section to 10 minutes. And if you're on Zoom, we just ask that you stay muted until somebody calls on you. And then say your name and your town. And if you're here in person, just raise your hand. And again, before you speak, please say your name and your town. And then we just remind folks to speak in turn, let the other person finish their thoughts. And we are really interested in hearing what everyone has to say, but if at any point comments become personal or negative towards staff, administrators, board members, or community members, we will ask that you cease speaking. And that's it.
There is a sign-up sheet at the end of that row there if you'll sign in too, so that minute taker can get you your name and town. Is there any public comment at this time? Okay.
Anybody up on the phone?
All right, let me check on Zoom. Is there any public comment from Zoom? Okay, I'm not seeing any. Okay, our first item under board management and governance is an update from the Community Engagement Committee. I'm going to let Krista take that.
Okay, thanks. And so this will be in the minutes. I'm just going to read what I have here, but you can refer to it after the meeting in the meeting minutes. So hopefully everybody knows that we launched the Thought Exchange tool on Monday, I guess that was in yesterday. Thanks to the Community Engagement Committee members who helped us figure out the question to use and the introduction that should go with that tool. It will run until Saturday the 18th. We were previously planning on having it run until the end of this week. But because we're advertising it in the Addison Independent and some folks don't get their physical copy of the paper, sometimes in the mail until, Friday late afternoon or Saturday morning, we're going to keep it open for those folks. I checked before I came and we had 328 responses so far. And this went out on Front Porch Forum. As I said, it's going in the Addison Independent, and it also went out to all MAUSD folks. So the way that we alert people in the district, families, staff, students. I'm going to ask board members that posted originally to please repost that link on Wednesday and also on Friday to remind people. So some of us from the Community Engagement Committee are going to be meeting with the Thought Exchange team on Friday afternoon to learn more about how to run reports. So our timeline is that we will be bringing the data from the Thought Exchange to our board meeting on the 20th. And so we're going on Friday to glean at least the structure of the reports and knowledge about how to use the data. And then we'll be able to pull whatever remaining data comes in after Friday afternoon before it closes on Saturday. The other thing that we hope to learn from the Thought Exchange folks is what they call closing the loop. So whenever we ask for input, it's as important to figure out what we're going to do with that input and how to communicate that out to people. And so when we share the data back, we'll share all of that part of the process with everyone on the 20th. So we've had some great questions from a couple of committee members about how the Thought Exchange is working, and I wanted to share some of those because I'm assuming that if some committee members had questions, then some folks in the public might have questions also. And I'd just also say that this is our first time using this tool. It's really new to us. And I think we'll learn more as we go forward with how to make it really effective. I'd also just say that it's not designed to be something we just use once and don't use again. So with any surveying we do, it's a snapshot of a moment in time. And Thought Exchange has lots of different types of questions you can ask, and they recommend a cadence for those questions so that you can see over time how responses might change or might stay consistent. So I think that's something we need to keep in mind. So one of the concerns that was raised is how the So I don't know if anyone's done it yet, but what happens is you share about 5 responses to a question, and then you're invited to rate the other responses that are in the thought exchange. And ideally, you would rate at between 20 and 30. And so far, the folks that have been going in, we have folks are doing that, which is great. They're going in and doing the rating piece. So we were wondering, well, how do you know what comes out in terms of the list of responses? So if somebody puts something in on Monday and you don't go in until Friday, or you're only going to see things that just came in, or you're going to see the oldest thoughts or the newest thoughts or the most popular thoughts. So they've got lots of fancy algorithms built by people way smarter than me about how to pull out themes of types of responses and make sure that people will see a range of those themes in terms of how they rate the responses. So that's really important, because we don't want it to be an echo chamber where you only see either the most recent thing or the thing that the most people shared. And so folks will see these thematic groupings, but the order in which I see different things to rate and the specific thoughts that I rate is going to be different than what Andrew would see, or Liz, or Dawn. And if you go in again, you'll see a different order. The only thing that would remain consistent would be that you would also see every 5th thought would be a thought that you shared. So I think that helps ensure there's some balance in the way that we see the responses. Let's see. So there's this theming that happens throughout through the back end, and there's also moderation tools that we've set that are machine generated, or they use AI to identify any harmful, potentially identifying comments. Those are flagged, pulled, and then the person in charge of the thought exchange, in this case that's me, goes in and can manually remove those before they're seen by anybody. Same with something that's repeated. So if this is, one person wants to put the same comment 5 times, that's going to get flagged as well. Let me see what else. Okay, something I think we're going to learn more about on Friday when we're with the Thought Exchange folks is how they determine what these themes are. And I think they're based on keywords. And so when you go in and do the Thought Exchange, you can look at instant results. And one of the ways you can see them is through a word cloud. And the word cloud includes words that represent those themes. And so the more often you see a word or words, the bigger that will show up in the word cloud. But I think we're going to learn a little bit more about how those themes are identified and those keywords. We also will have the ability, because we asked a survey question which helped people identify their role in the district, we'll have abilities to go, we can have the ability to go in and parse out responses by students, responses by staff, responses by community members. So that's just a little bit about how the tool works. I had 2 other quick updates, but before I do, let me just see if anybody has any other questions that come to mind about it.
I did it today and it was amazingly painless.
Good. Yeah. If you think of something that you really want to know more about or have a concern or question, let me know, because the team at Thought Exchange is incredibly responsive and very prompt in those responses. So it's easy for me to get back information to you. Yeah.
I just wanted to say I'm very excited that you put this together and implemented the tool. I think it has a lot of possibilities.
Thank you. Yeah, I think so too. And I hope we can use it in other places in the district as well. One question did come up, and I think this is really important. It is painless, super easy. I put it together in a day, but it doesn't necessarily reach people for whom this sort of way of providing input is not something they would normally do. And so I think with all the engagement we do, we really need to think about how we reach folks that wouldn't participate in something like this. And that's a question that I have for the group to consider, is should we offer any other way for people to provide input beyond this tool? I don't know if anybody has any thoughts for this particular budget purpose right now, or something you might think about after. But it is something that we need to be keeping in mind. These resources are so incredible and so easy to use, and they limit who participates, or they can limit who participates. Okay, so so I said before, the thought exchange data will be available on the 20th, and then we are going to have, the board is going to sponsor a community budget information meeting on January 12th. And so between the 20th and the 12th, the idea is that Patrick and his team will have received this input from the thought exchange. They will have heard our questions and priorities as a board. And then on the 12th, then we would be sharing with the community how this budget that we're then going to vote to approve to be warned aligns with these things that we heard and questions we asked about and priorities we've expressed as a board. So, so I think that's it. Oh, the last thing is we do have a column going out in the paper this week that reflects information about the thought exchange, as well as some other topics that we always, on our community engagement committee meeting, we generate a list of things that we think folks might want to know about. It usually includes updates on the merger study or the facilities planning process. So you can keep an eye out for that when the paper comes out on Thursday. I think that's it, unless anybody has any questions. Hi, Zoomers. Any questions from board members about what I just shared about the thought exchange or the update in general? I don't see any.
Kristen,
Yeah.
just in general, I mean, in terms of your thought about people who might not use this method of communicating, I mean, it certainly doesn't preclude anybody from sending the board, either their representative or to Dawn or to Patrick, a question about the budget. So the traditional method of contacting the board and expressing concerns or questions is certainly just as viable as well for folks who might not want to.
Yeah, that's right. And actually, that was a suggestion that a committee member made, was what if we just encourage folks that aren't using the tool to submit their input via email. And so my only concern was, if folks chose that instead of the thought exchange, would we get overwhelmed and have to comb through that? But I think that maybe it's something we should just take the risk and make sure we get the input.
Sure. I mean, my sense from past experience is that we probably won't get overwhelmed. And if we do, then it'll be a learning experience and we'll have to figure out the tact.
So it sounds like at least folks here are thinking that maybe that's a good message to put out as well. And maybe we should add that to Front Porch Forum when we repost it. To invite people to use this tool, but if they're not able to access it or comfortable doing it, to please send their input to
their board rep or
their board rep.
or to Dawn or both.
Okay. Thank you.
Krista,
Yeah.
sorry, I wonder too if the people who might not access this tool are also, sorry,
What did you say to her?
1 second, please.
Did you
Are also people
Did you
who might,
say yes to her?
who are also people who might not have access to the internet in general. And I wonder if maybe there's a way to have some sort of other format of the exchange available
Please,
to community
let me just
members.
do it.
other people think.
And what format would that?
I mean, yeah, I completely agree with Aaron. That's the thought I had is, front porch forum is going to folks with connectivity. And it tends to probably be our older community residents that might not be, either have access or is nimble. I don't know if we could partner with local libraries so that could be up on a computer screen so that if a resident came in, there's some sort of notification, say, we'd love your feedback. Just there's one access point, I guess. Probably wouldn't catch that many people, but I think it's hard. I mean, we did a survey a year ago at this time, right? And with pretty good success as far as respondents, but I mean, unfortunately, we're never going to catch everyone. So I think just sharing, again, just that communication with our community in regards to see them at the general store or whatever. What do you think about the budget or budget process? Another thought I had is we always send out a flyer regarding our budget, and maybe you get clever and there can be some sort of, detached form and mail it back with some feedback. Like, what do you think would work better next year? Because those go out to all our community members. I'm correct in saying that, right? So I don't know. That could be another touch point.
One thing I was just thinking, and then maybe we can wrap it up, is when we haven't yet finalized the text for the Addison Independent, but we could put in there a note to please email if you're not using Thought Exchange, or please reach out to your board representative if you're not comfortable using Thought Exchange, and start there. And then I would fully support anyone else who wants to take the initiative to do anything else on this for this moment in time. But this is just, this is, like I said, Rob, one way to reach only a small portion of folks. So it's important to keep working on all those other ways. Okay.
Okay, so we're gonna keep moving on. Chris and I worked to come up with a plan to sort of help with the conversation. That's part of the reason why you see the agenda outline. Times are approximate, but that was our attempt after the last meeting, and comments were made about the length of it. So that was our attempt to sort of rope things in, and we'll need your help with that. So Kevin's watching the agenda time for us. This next part of the board meeting is around a discussion, and Chris and I again met and talked about a productive way to have this discussion and be a little more structured than we usually are to try and get to some valuable information. And we thought that the small groups really worked well when we did that before, so we thought we'd give that a try. We have 3 discussion items on the agenda. And how we're gonna do this is we're gonna work through each item one at a time, but we're gonna take item B, and I'm gonna give you 5 minutes, and I'm gonna set the timer, 5 minutes for you to look over that prioritized list of board work that we sort of rushed through at the last meeting, but it was the chart where we saw what everybody, the 9 people that responded, what was important for board work. They were those parking lot ideas. So what we'll do is take 5 minutes on your own, and then we're gonna do 10 minutes with 3 people, but we have one group that has 4 because we have an odd number tonight, to share with your group. Please be sure that everybody gets a chance to share. So, and then 15 minutes for your small group to come back to the table and tell us all what you talked about. And then we've asked Susan to scribe for us the ideas, and we'll take about 5 minutes to summarize them and figure out our next steps. I will use my phone timer, so if you will all be responsive to that, that would be great. So I'll just tell you the quick groups, and then we'll get a little more into the instructions. So Krista is going to be in group 1, and Liz in 2, Andrew 3, Sandy 1, Kevin 2, Steve 3, Rob 1, Brad, if you will call Kevin or Liz on their cell phone and join it, and then they can put you on speakerphone, so you can join that group number 2. Dave, if you will call Andrew or Steve and join them in group 3, and then Aaron, if you would call Krista and join in group 1, so that you can participate. Okay, all right, so what we're going to do is, when we're set, we're gonna get into the groups, and we're gonna go, want to go through them real quick?
Sure, and just before we start, is everyone on board with rolling through it, being pretty task-oriented here and seeing how this works? Yeah? Okay, awesome. All right, so I'm gonna put up onto that door the questions for each group to think about as you go through item B and C. And when we get to D, it's a little more open-ended, but we'll still be in our groups. So item B is the survey with the prioritization of the different things that we want to consider as a board, improvement of ongoing communication, discussion and consideration of school advisory councils, and the interpretation, timing of report, and other changes to the ends monitoring report and policy. So these are some questions to help structure that conversation. Question 1, in which order should we address each item? Question 2, what information do we need to effectively tackle each of those items? And question 3, what should be our next steps? And just so you know, they are listed in the order that they ranked in the survey, but you might decide tonight that, because that survey was a moment in time, maybe we want to change the order.
It's the pie chart?
Yep,
Yes.
Okay.
that's right.
And it was in an email from December 12th. Kevin, help me find
And
it.
it was sent Saturday night, and that sort of regroup where I explained what was gonna happen, and it's the prioritized list.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So again, you have, let's see, 5 minutes to think about this on your own, and then we'll get into our triads.
You ready?
Okay, so now we're gonna take 15 minutes to go around and for your group to share the answers to your question. And,
Is that me? I got
yeah, so the first question is, in which order should we address each item? So I guess we'll just call this order. First one, start here.
Yeah, so
You want this?
How about now? Okay. So we rank ordered communication, policy governance committee, and advisory councils first. And then under 2 was an umbrella, because I saw out of that survey there were 3 things I thought could fit underneath the policy governance committee, which were monitoring, advisory councils, student advisory councils.
School advisory.
School advisory council, yeah. Some sort of committee or council or something like that. So much in my head. So, yeah, so communication and then the policy governance committee, which would include in monitoring at the committee level. If we formed a PG committee, they would do the ins monitoring, monitor report timing, provide some recommendations for that, and then one idea I had was that the policy governance committee could also talk about direct inspection and third-party inspection for every single policy we have. Like, what would that look like? Here's a menu of options for the board to consider, or that whoever does a monitoring report would have some ideas to think about. Not necessarily that we would use them, but someone had kind of thought them out beforehand.
No. Yeah.
All right, so we discussed as a group that sort of, we thought our top priority, because it's the umbrella in a sense, is the improvement of ongoing communication. And we sort of talked about the fact of the board improving its communication outward to our communities. And then as we've been working this fall and grappling with improvement of communication within sort of the district itself, between the board and the administration and all that. So it seems really big, but it's the overarching theme that we thought then levers that could improve communication would be school advisory councils and better ends monitoring. And so as far as, you know, the next steps with communication, a couple thoughts we had of, you know, is there resources via VSBA? And maybe they only look at sort of the board communicating it outward to the public, but we could use, I think, some help there. And maybe they have internally too for an organization. We also thought, like, hey, what do other boards do? You know, I'll be honest, I've really only been in one other board meeting with folks from Madison Northwest, and it'd be great to know, like, what is successful for other boards and other parts of just even Addison County. When we looked at the school advisory councils, we didn't really get into sort of the next steps necessarily, but a thought I had is, you know, that would be a great place where the school advisory council could also do some communication out to the public too, and maybe take a little bit of that, I wouldn't call it an onus, but take maybe a little bit off of our shoulders too, at least at the local level of, let's say, you know, Robinson Advisory Council, really communicating with the folks in Starksville and stuff like that. And then same, we referenced Sandy's 3.4 monitoring report in regards to, I guess, Andrew, exactly what sort of you said is a ends monitoring subcommittee or whatever it's titled.
PG, policy governance.
Policy governance, sorry, yeah, that's that could be a really effective tool for that.
I think we didn't necessarily choose a first in order. I would say probably communication and community councils of some kind were also went together for us. We were wondering if there was a communication role that could come from principals. Our goal would be to alleviate the us versus them, and we're also wondering what is our role versus admin role. We talked about the ends policy and a policy governance committee together as well. We would hope to approve our approach and what might the goals be. And I think that the first group over there helped us think about what those goals would be, like how do we monitor. I think that we have we want to improve our approach to monitoring and maybe wonder how we use policy governance as well. And if we're using it the right way, in the most productive way, that's the best connects us with our community. And also wondering how the strategic plan connects with all of this, because it has measurable goals and targets, and it has more of a breakdown, whereas the ends policy can seem really vague. The strategic plan gives very more concrete breakdowns for whether things are improving and how, and that could help us with our ends policy if there's a connection there. And of course, Brad, if you had anything to add.
I'd just say that, I think that it came across, you stated it well, Liz, that there's definitely a linkage between the communications issue and the community councils. I think that kind of came out in our discussion. The only sort of footnote I might add is that, I personally think that there's a lot of work that can be done on the policy governance side. I think there's some, not disagreement, but there's some differences of opinion as to how we implement the policy governance as a board, and the breadth of our sort of a charge as a board. Is some think it ought to be narrowed, some think it ought to be broadened. So I think that taking some steps to really dig into how we implement policy governance would be a worthwhile activity.
Thanks, Brad. Okay. So it's looking to me, as I look at that list, that a lot of things could be helped along if we did some policy governance work around, because one of the main roles of the board is that connection between the community, and I think just having some stronger, feeling like we were stronger at policy governance could help with a lot of that. So as I'm looking at that, I'm thinking a lot could be covered under that policy governance work, and that may be a place for us to start, and maybe it's more structured conversations and going through things and working together to do it, that we could make some progress. I'm also thinking that the communication piece, maybe we can lean on the community engagement committee to come with help us and give us some recommendations about how we can get better and get more, have more back and forth kind of thing. I don't know, Krista, if you want to add something about what you're seeing?
Well, I was just thinking that I wonder if we need to put something on our next agenda about whether we want to form a policy governance committee or not, and then we can discuss if that's the right tool or if we do it as a full board. But I think that came up a number of times. I think there's pros and cons to forming a committee versus doing it as a board, but that may be the logical next step, is to see if we want to take any action on that. And then for the communication piece, I think there were a lot of good ideas, and that might be something that we can talk about in the community engagement committee as far as how we can come up with a plan for looking into some different resources to see what exists from other board examples and what we've already done and what we might want to build upon. So yeah, I think that could probably live there. Does anybody else see any themes, next step summary?
The flow chart that Steve presented last time, we should really relook at that, because it's a good place to start. And
Hey, Dawn,
yes, Brad.
Just a, a quick thought here. It seems to me, this whole exercise trying to prioritize sort of suggests that we have a lot of issues that are, both important and fairly complex. And I'm wondering if we sort of look at the, policy governance, the way we implement policy governance, we might think about how we are operating as a board, because we, at least in the 6 months that I've been on the board, pretty much everything operates on as a board, at the level of the board as a whole, as opposed to, on other boards and other organizations I've been involved in, you have more of a committee structure where, you set up committees to tackle, specific issues. Because when you're working as 13 people all at once, it's a little less efficient and doesn't allow sometimes for sort of the in-depth thinking and that might be required to solve some of the challenges that we face. So I would think that one thing we might consider is to come up with a committee structure for the board. Again, I'm not sure what that would look like, but having a policy governance committee, maybe a finance committee, and we have a de facto communications committee through the CEC, I guess. Anyway, that's just a thought.
Oh, okay, thanks. Running out of time. so-
Ready to move on to the next item?
Yep, I think we are. All right, so the next item is item C. Is that what we're moving on to, right? Our themed
Yeah.
questions. And those we had them at our last meeting, but we had to rush through them as well. So, let's see. Okay. And I resent that one.
So we're going to take 5 minutes to go through these
Yep. I will.
2 questions.
So, yep, and there's 2 questions to think about as you look at that list of themed questions. Okay, timer's going.
You're gonna share the screen or something?
Yep, he's getting it.
Okay.
All right, so let's go around and see, so do we have answers to all the questions, and are there any other things to consider, so?
So this was sort of a tough session to grapple with, but on the list of things in our parking lot, it seemed like it might be a good idea to have a running list of an issues log that we could populate, and it could be someplace where we would be able to update that on a monthly basis. It could be linked into the agenda, just like the work plan is, or it could be part of the work plan. It could be another tab under the work plan with a whole list of running issues. People could populate it on their, board members could edit that and throw an issue on there if they wanted to have it talked about. And then we could have another priorities check-in every once in a while to see if we need to bring some of those issues up the list. Just to make sure we're not leaving something really important at the bottom of that list. But we'd be able to see what the status of each of those things are as a, if there's a committee working on it, or if there's a, somebody tasked with looking into the answer to the question. That could be something, a monthly read. Balancing challenges, successes of future planning, I think speaks directly to committee structures. And we're trying to accomplish the board business here in a very short period of time in a public meeting. But future planning takes more focused, in-depth analysis by probably a more concise group of folks who might have the interest in the tools to deal with the topic. The whole thing about data collection and the different styles of monitoring, I think getting the VSBA, or I forget who the lady is we always talk about. Somebody of that ilk to come in and just sort of talk about the pros and cons and how they've seen it done. We have helpful monitoring report, an outside look at it, would agree that that's probably not a bad approach to take on almost any topic. Social, emotional, behavioral health. I think a lot of this really has to do with, as far as the board is concerned, with just improving communications, like just what's the policy, what is having the, if we're learning, as Andrew said, we're having to learn how this works. How does the public expect to know how this works? How do we better communicate how this all works and what we're doing to improve it? Feedback and input. It would be good to take the litmus test of going through the website to see how, if I could file a complaint, whether I would get to the end of that process without, pulling what's left of my hair out. And seeing if there's ways to improve that. A lot of these other things, staff, principal input, I think all ties back to what the advisory councils could really be a great tool for all of that. I had some thoughts on feedback and input from our last discussion I didn't have time to throw in here, but one of them is superintendent's reports. I've seen those have been quite in other districts, and I think that's a great place for Patrick to bring people up to speed with the work the district's doing, what the administration is doing on different topics and tasks, and to get out in front of some of the things that are arising that we're working on in a way that could be posted on the website, could be made part of the minutes, and we'd have kind of an ongoing update from Patrick on things that he's working on. The principals could chime in. There could be a principals section of that same report. Maybe it rotates on a monthly basis. I was thinking of the way that we try to distribute communications with folks is difficult. We're trying to, the board is getting something from the communications committee, and we're trying to post it on Front Porch Forum. They're trying to put it on Andy. And we're doing this through Google and maybe Facebook, and it seemed like it might be reasonable to expect people to go to our district website and there be a very fixed news feed kind of slot on the website where they could click on all of these things and see them, and we could link to that thing very quickly and easily for updates of things. Comment there?
So I think I have consensus from us that everything that Steve said was a lot of what we discussed. I think those are great suggestions. One of the first things we mentioned too is what Brad had mentioned earlier too about committee structure. It's very difficult as a whole board to do really intense business on this particular subject, where a committee really can do that deep work. Just like the community engagement committee is capable of really doing some specific work. I think a policy governance committee, I know that's been put out there, a finance committee. There are various committees, I think, that can really help us as a whole, as a board, to be more informed and be able to do that deeper dive. Because it takes a lot of time. I'm sure these guys might have other things to add. I think a lot of the social, emotional, behavioral health, these are both ends and executive limitations. It does pop up in both of those. I put some things in the 3.4 compliance report for us as a board for suggestions of what I think we can do to make sure that we are more vigorously making sure we're getting information so that we can then also then communicate it. But again, I thought the suggestions from Steve were great.
So, we have lots of different thoughts in our group, and, some feeling of a lot of the questions as having been answered, different feelings about third-party audits. I guess kind of broke down into learning our response or improving our ability to monitor ourselves and improving our capability to do that, which is policy governance committee. That would be a piece, and data, to have someone look at what is being collected, longitudinal data, and just to make sure we're correcting, or that we're collecting the information that we need. So that could be a third party piece. For the social emotional learning, knowing more about how teachers are involved in that, and recognizing that every person at the table has different responsibilities, and that it is a collaboration. And so I don't really know how to, I think somebody else from my group should chime in on that part if they have more feelings about that. And also principals, our connection with principals and their connection with teachers versus versus direct board interact. I guess this is a really tricky one for me to put the thoughts together about how I'm not sure that we came to any necessarily next steps as a group. That's my notes.
I think Liz said it pretty well. We did talk quite a bit about at length about the whole process of how, you know, and she said it very, very concisely, very well about the interaction between a classroom teacher, support people, parents, and all that, and for that matter, parents, all the support or all the different collaborators with a student that has some special needs.
Okay, there's a long list of things so I think, probably what's best is for Krista and I to take this list and sort of chew on it, mull it around a little longer and see how, if we can come up with some ways to insert some of that work into the future agendas that are coming up. And just give us some time to sort of talk to each other and sort of come up with a plan. Steve?
I was wondering, Don, as part of this exercise, this 1, 2, 3 thing we did with the ends or the advisory council or if we might want to take, like a dedicated chunk of one of the next board meetings and focus on that topic, and then move that topic, if that topic needs to move to a committee, then that topic moves to a committee. If the board wants to move it as a whole, then it can, but instead of just like 5 minutes to try to, I think we were just prioritizing whether we were going to spend time on it. Is that kind of the goal? Is that kind of what this was about?
It was to get a little more direction from the group because we really didn't have an opportunity to talk about it, but I also think that maybe in our conversation, it might become obvious to Krista and I that we have to think about ways outside of the meeting to make this work, and it may involve another meeting that is focused strictly on that in a different format, that it's outside, because when we're in our regular business meeting, we have regular business that we have to attend to, so otherwise we end up with a meeting when, like, a catch up back on things, so I could see, just like thinking now about that long list, like maybe there's a way to break it into little pieces and work on a piece, and then that piece would have some direction, and we send it along, we decide, okay, this is the best way to handle that, and we go forward in a particular way. Krista, I don't know if you want to.
Yeah.
I see you're thinking as well.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think like one of the reasons why we wanted to try this is because we had this extra meeting time and we didn't need a ton of time to focus just on facilities work, but we wanted to have a conversation on some of these topics that was a little different from our usual, like popcorn, everybody shares one thought, maybe it's not a fully baked thought, maybe you react only to what the person next to you said and you don't kind of get to revisit it. And so we thought, since we had this space and time today, and these were 3 things that we wanted to try to get through, then instead of doing it our regular style, we might try to do it like this. Not quite knowing, and I feel like we're a little bit awkward in it because we don't usually do it like this, but maybe we'll get better. I think it's just trying to figure out how to move things forward, but in a way that allows everybody to be part of the conversation and get their thoughts out. And then, I mean, already I think we can all see certain things are rising to the top, and so that is maybe the next step, is just to cherry pick some of those places and then focus just on that at the next time we meet. So, and if other people have other ideas of how to get through some of these topics, totally welcome to take us down.
So now we're at our point for a break. So you can have 5 minutes if you need to just stretch your legs or whatever, and then be right back here at 7:30 so you can get through the next part, which is item D. Okay, so just take 5 minutes. Okay, so we're back. This time we're going to go back into our groups of 3 But we're not gonna take the 5 minutes ahead to do your own, because you knew this was coming, and I just assumed you probably already had some questions on your mind, so you don't need 5 minutes to get your questions. So if you'll get in your group and go around with each other and share your questions, and then it would be helpful if your small group would sort of rate your questions and get them in a little bit of an order, and then we'll put them up on, we'll write everybody's question down when they come out of their group, and then we will go through each question and decide with thumbs whether that's one we want to commit to as a board asking, or if it's not. So, okay, so we use the thumbs up. Yes, thumb sideways, sure, I can live with it. Thumbs down, no. All right, so back to your groups, and I'll give you 15 minutes. All right, here we go.
Right, so that's.
Let's
I'm
get
not sure
started,
that I
we're on a
know
time
much
crunch
more
here.
of that, right, like, I'm not sure.
Do you have the questions, or? Okay.
All right, here we go. So we have 4 questions. The first one is the current 5% increase in budget sufficient to provide necessary supports academically and social emotionally? If not, what is that number? I'll try not to talk too fast for you.
Yes, thank you. To provide a top social emotional supports.
Correct. Yeah. If not, what is the number? Okay, the second one was, what does the 5% look like in the context of next year? So as you know, sometimes we've had budget cycles where thinking ahead, we either need to dig deep this year in order to make it better for us next year, or go light this year and it's going to be devastating the following year. So just having a look at how that 5% sets us up for the next budget cycle. Okay, the third one was, are we able to anticipate the waiting study impact on us? So if we're planning conservatively, that will be negatively impacted, which sounds like that may not be the case, but how does this frame our thinking on this year's 5% increase?
Say that one more time, sorry. Are we able to say what?
The impact of the waiting study, and that if it impacts us negatively, how does that frame the 5% increase for this year?
Say the second part again, I'm apologizing.
That's fine. How does that frame our thinking about the 5% increase? Will we need any rifts or attrition of FTEs to keep the budget at 5%? And if so, can the system absorb this relatively seamlessly? And if not, what will be the consequence?
What was the second part, Andrew?
Can the system absorb this relatively seamlessly? The 5% budget? And if it can't, what will be the consequence?
Do the pens have enough ink?
Yeah, it's
That
just
was
that
my
I'm not
opinion.
used to handwriting anymore, I'm used to typing, so I can't.
What's happening?
Good luck.
Oh, go ahead, I'll go ahead.
Well, we sort of referenced an email that we got as a board from Nancy and Herb. I thought a lot of those questions, I mean, Sandy started typing them out, but A big piece was that, I'm assuming that we'll lose some folks, either they'll retire or do a change in career. And, are we looking to fill those positions next year? I think for me personally, this wasn't a group consensus, is still being new to the board, sort of the philosophy behind the budget development and that number. And it seemed by 1 year of doing this that it was really driven by the spending threshold. And to me, that seemed like a very blunt, sort of top-down number that then dictated everything else below it. And with that sort of number gone, at least for the next couple of years, is this an opportunity for us to then think a little bit more about changing that philosophy and building from the ground up? And I think that's really spoken to, like, looking to the different building leaders and asking them, like, what do you really need in your building right now? We still might be in a COVID world next fall. Our students will have still lived at least through 2 academic years of COVID. So, unfortunately, I think their trajectories maybe aren't where we want them. And so I'm not saying that necessarily we need to throw more money at it, but are we spending basically via staffing, the appropriate levels of staffing in each building so that every one of our students can reach their full potential? And that might not be sort of an equal number per building, depending on the different needs in the different buildings in our district. So some way to sort of really know if that's a conversation that's sort of happening. I'm also curious, like, how do the ESSER funds fit into this? And then, can we tap into, if we need to, some of our other capital and reserved funds to maybe help us if we do need to put more sort of boots on the ground in our buildings, fill those positions, at least for FY23. And I know that's been a hard thing to do, and then we also talked about sort of some of the big assumptions, as Andrew mentioned. I don't know if Act 173, if that's gone into effect, just don't know. The pupil rating study, the Ed Fund, as of now, I think is almost $100 million to the good. Like what assumptions in regards to yield? Granted, knowing those are all assumptions, but they'll have an answer at some point, usually later than we want. Yeah.
I just want one, if I could add just one question. It's, how have building principals been involved in the budgeting process? And to that extent, if so, what are their key requests and concerns? And are they addressed by the budgeting priorities?
You can have more.
Sure. It's right. And so if they're involved in the process, and if so, what are their key requests and concerns? And are they addressed by our budgeting priorities? I think the attrition one, but I don't know if that's where we've been. The question is the vacated positions from FY21 and 22 and the anticipated vacated positions in 22 and 23. Will they be budgeted to be filled? Those anticipated positions, will they actually be filled? Like, is that part of the budget? And if not, yes or no, why? And whichever way it goes, how does that decision support the academic, social, and emotional needs of our students during this time of COVID? Especially in light of the staffing, sort of not staffing, I should say, shortage of qualified individuals that we're all experiencing, I think, in COVID. How are we going to address that, and can we do it with the resources we currently
Yeah, I think what this group said about kind of showing how the 5% addresses our social, emotional, academic needs kind of captures a lot of the things we're saying under that. And so I think these are suggestions of how to demonstrate that. And another one I would add that sort of falls in the staffing piece is, I think we've seen this before, staffing per school, per pupil count. But I can't recall if we've seen that pupil count with anticipated needs. So I don't know what that would look like, and I don't know if you can call out specifically what that looks like. If you can call specifically what that looks like, but in other words, 10 students at Bristol might not be the same as 10 students at Moncton, might not be the same as 10. So just sort of like the projection of how many kids in a school and staff in the school and the anticipated needs of that class or those classes.
Staffing projections with the need.
Yeah. And then like back to the assumptions one, I think, one thing that Nate was talking about was, or maybe it wasn't with his budget recommendations for us, but like with all the assumptions, can we look at, and I think you've done this in the past first, Patrick, like the most conservative assumption and then the maybe sort of mid-range to help us get a feel for where we are with some of the moving parts that we don't have control over.
So closing in on our time, so
Yep.
we gotta.
This is good.
Oh, that's,
So
okay.
I think it's good, maybe not.
I personally do not have any questions. Check. Devin.
Why don't you introduce your question and then we'll just go to Brad on Zoom, right?
So my question was, I would, and at this point being the third group, we've got a lot of similar questions. I would like to see a breakdown, maybe like a chart that lists each school, the middle school and the high school, and then associated with those locations, the budget build that follows the traditional equalized student pupil costs, if you will. Another column with other budget items, particularly like bonds or anything that's not folded into that equalized pupil budget number. The number of students at each location, the number of equalized pupils credited to each one of those locations, and then that would drive a dollar per equalized pupil cost at each location. And then Brad had a series of questions as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I'm a little overwhelmed by this. I think that we're looking at a $30+ million budget and trying to come up with sort of meaningful questions to be asked about budget formulation in a 30-minute exercise at a board meeting. I'm not sure that's the best way to go about this. I have a whole list of questions that I've come up with and have been generated by members of the community, many of which are overlap with the ones that Sandy and Rob articulated a few minutes ago. I guess what I would like to find out is if some way that we can put these questions all down in one place, take a look at them, and then comment on them, and sort of decide as to which ones, try to prioritize them and sort of organize them in a way that will be sort of intelligible by Floyd and Patrick and others, when we ask them. I'm particularly concerned about some of the assumptions that underlie the current budget. Given the manifest sort of change in circumstances over the last year and a half, and I'm just not sure what those assumptions are. I don't know, for example, in the current budget, how it reflects any changes in thinking from the budget projections that, as I understand it, would have been made last year for the 22-23 school year. I think that would sort of go a long way in at least helping me understand what the budget looks like. The other major point that I think that I'd like to hear more about is that we've undertaken this this merger study committee exercise with and one of the assumptions there is that we're going to save a whole pile of money through economies of scale. And I'd like to know, for example, how is that thinking integrated into the 22-23 budget? So that would be another major component of the questions that I would propound to the administration. I'm happy to share. I have a Word document. I'm happy to share that with you, Dawn, as part of an exercise in putting the questions together for a sort of kind of a thoughtful way of compiling a list of a list of questions for the administration to respond to.
Okay. So there isn't really a mechanism for us to create a list and then all give feedback on it because of the open meeting law. So I'm guessing if you don't want some answers on the 20th, we could take all these questions and Krista and I can theme them, but that means you're gonna have to wait till we can talk about it again to go through the questions. And I'm just, Krista.
I was just gonna see if anybody else had a suggestion of how to move it forward, because I think this was our hope, was to do this here as a group so that we could provide a digestible list to Patrick and Floyd, but it's challenging. So, but we have a timeline and we have to be realistic about what they could provide for us in a short timeline. So I would just say, anyone else who wants to take a stab at how to move this forward? Steve?
So I'm just wondering if we could maybe use some of the tools we used in the past when we had this big long list of questions. Or Patrick, you might get all the questions, and you could say, "Hey, look, I can do ding, 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 ding in the time period that for the next meeting. This group down here is going to take all my staff 2 months to put together. So maybe you want to think about whether we want to dive that deep." And these 3 questions I might be able to get you at least in time for understanding, which I plan to update anyway because the budget's going to change 3 times before we finally vote on it. So that might be one way to do it. I think we did that kind of with the facilities questions. We had this just populated this big long list, and then Patrick gave some filtering feedback, and we took what we could take and made some decisions about what other stuff is still in. I mean, at least that way we might get half the list answered for next.
I mean, I have no idea, for example, how much effort it's going to take to answer all the questions. I mean, it could take an hour, it could take 10 hours. I just don't know, since I don't know what Patrick and Floyd know. So I do know that there's a number of the questions they're on the list that I have, about the use of the federal funds, and I know that there are some plans in place, and maybe the plans in place can answer those questions quite easily. So I mean, I would support giving Patrick the full list, and I have full confidence that Patrick could answer, distill that into a set of answers that will address most, if not all of them. And if there are any holes, after that exercise, then we can follow up with it.
Okay. Oh, we have a microphone.
So I was going to suggest a hybrid of voting tonight and then consolidation, condensing the list. So maybe we just go thumbs up, thumbs down through the entire list. I mean, some of these things are basically saying the same thing over again. Get thumbs up, thumbs down on them, and then maybe, I don't know, if Dawn or Krista, you would rank order those and then collapse them into the category, so at least we have something at the top that seems clear that that's what the board wants to hear about. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, I'm just mindful of our time, but
Yeah, we could
what
do
do
it
people think?
2 minutes flat.
You're running the clock?
Let's just
Fine.
rifle through them, get thumbs up, thumbs down.
You wanna lead it?
Yeah, sure.
All right, go Andrew.
All right.
Can I add one quick caveat?
Okay.
I think that's a good idea, and we have to also acknowledge that there may be thumbs up to enough questions that the 4 days we have to answer them is insufficient.
Yeah.
So I think regardless of how we do this, we're gonna end up with a list of questions that we'll do our best to get as most answers to as possible. But just recognize it's 4 work days, and that's if we stopped everything else and only worked on this, which may be hard to do.
Can I make one other suggestion? As you're considering it, think of it whether you want a high-level answer or you want something in the weeds, which is gonna dictate hours versus days to get some of these answers. It's really what you need, it's not, it's what we want to provide what you need, we recognize that that's just 4 days.
So I'd just like to add that the process won't work for this year, but if we had a finance committee, the process would work much better.
Okay, so we'll rank order these quickly, and then we can condense the list at a later time.
So for clarity, thumbs
Thumbs
up
up.
means, or thumbs sideways means a yes, but a thumbs down means we move on to the next one, and it's not a go. Okay? All right.
2 minutes. Is the current 5% budget increase sufficient to provide social emotional supports? If not, what is sufficient? Okay, I got 1, 2, 2 up, 3, 4, 5 up.
2 and Brad's not voting yet.
Dave's on there.
I see Dave, I see Aaron, but I don't see Brad, so.
20 seconds down.
Okay, I got 5 up here, 1 sideways.
So that's this one.
Okay. What does the 5% look like in the context of next year's budget cycle? That's up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
You mean the following year?
For the following year.
1 thumb,
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
thumb sideways, thumbs down.
I got 6 up. 2 sideways. Are we able to anticipate the impact of the weighting study? How does that frame thinking about the 5% increase? Thumbs up. 1, 2, 3.
Thumbs down. Get 1 down.
Okay. 4 up, 2 down here. Okay. Will we need to RIF attrition to stay within the 5%? What are the consequences? Can the system support this seamlessly? Thumbs up. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 sideways, 1 down. Okay, I got 4 here. Career changes, attrition, will those positions be filled?
Same question, right?
Same question.
Same.
Skip. What is the philosophy to budget building threshold? Can it be built from the ground up with building leaders? Thumbs up. I got 1 up. I got 1, 2, 3. I got 2. 1 here. Yeah. 1 out. Okay. Are we spending to ensure all students reach full potential? Thumbs up.
Repeat the question.
Are we spending to ensure all students reach full potential? Down, down, sideways. Sideways. Okay. How do ESSER funds fit into this? Capital or ed reserve funds to fill positions? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah. Okay, 5 up here. Has Act 173 gone into effect?
Sure, yes or no?
I got 1, 2.
What was the question?
Has Act 173, I don't Special is,
Special ed block grant?
okay, special ed block grant, has that gone into effect? So is that a question we want to ask? I got one thumb up, 2 thumbs up.
Going one.
Going twice. Okay, how have principals been involved in budget building? If involved, what are their key requests or concerns? Are they addressed by our budgeting priorities? You got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Vacated positions in FY '21 to '22, are they being filled? Yes, no, why? Repeat. Skip. What are projected staffing in each building compared to student needs? Thumbs up. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, 4 up. What is the breakdown of each school budget billed that per equalized pupil number of students that drives equalized pupils? Does that make sense?
Yes, Kevin's question.
Kevin's question, so Kevin's
Of course.
up for it. 1. I'm sideways. 1. 1. 2. Okay, 2 up here. Looks like we're skipping. What are the assumptions that underlie the FY23 budget? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right, that's good. Merger Study Committee, impact of economics of scale integrated into FY23. Thumbs up.
Say it again, Andrew?
Merger Study Committee, impact of economics of scale integrated into the FY23 budget. Dave, so we got no thumbs up here. Yeah, okay.
Wow. 5 minutes?
6 minutes.
Good job, Andrew, thank you.
So, all right, we got some direction there.
Only a couple days of work with
For one of those questions.
All right, and then Brad sent his questions. So I got your email, Brad. All right, okay. We all good? All right, any brief feedback? Oh, Kevin's got it running out of time. Any brief feedback on the process? How'd you feel about the process of the small groups? Okay. All right. Okay, then we're gonna move on. We're gonna go to public comment at this time. I'm gonna check in the room and then I'll go to Zoom. So anyone in the room have a public comment? I'll bring in my phone.
I just want to say those were all very good questions and that you deserve the answers to all of them.
OSHA. Trip on the cords. All right, is that Herb?
Yeah, thanks, John. So, first of all, I wanted to express my appreciation to the board for the budget process this year. There's some new wrinkles that I think are very helpful in terms of asking the community for the input. And obviously, you know, this meeting shows that the board is very invested in seeking out the information, seeking some information. And this is really important because the budget is a major piece of policy adopted by the board. Beyond, you know, a particular spending cap, there are major policy implications in the budget that you folks approve. And so you need the information that you need to make the policy decisions that you think are important. And so what comes to mind is the last meeting of the board. The administration, I think it was pretty, upfront, very clear that they did not intend to fill any vacant positions that occurred during this, fiscal year, 21-22 school year or fiscal year, whatever. So that's a statement. That, in my mind, raises two important policy issues for the board. First, should in fact direct service staff be reduced during a time of significant stress for students, teachers, and the learning environment as a whole? That's a policy choice. The second policy choice that occurs to me in connection with, well, we're not going to fill any vacant positions, is what are the implications for the viability of elementary schools that the administration has designated for closure? Because if you remember, the administration said you have, back in December, a year ago this year, you have three choices. You can either raise your taxes astronomically, drastically reduce students, or close 3 schools. So and attrition, not filling vacancies is, to me, is part of fulfilling, that vision. So I think that the question for the board, the question that the board needs to, the information that the board needs to know is what are the staffing? What's going to be the staffing under a proposed budget at each of the facilities and at the superintendent's office level? Because that will go a long way to helping you determine what you want to say about policy in terms of, the immediate impacts, COVID events, all sorts of stuff going on. And also, what's the future hold for elementary schools? So I would encourage you to ask for so in December 2020, the administration put out a bunch of spreadsheets, very informative. And one of them, a series of them, one of them was a projection of staffing in each of the facilities, as well as the superintendent's office, if facilities did not, if the administration's plan to close schools was not approved. And that's a good template, I think, for you folks in terms of information to help you make your policy decisions, because that will tell you what direction the administration is going in, and whether, if you think that's good, that's fine. If you have, some concerns about that, that's where you get to weigh in. So I'd encourage you to get that kind of information and consider those specific policy issues that I think are the board's to make. If you don't make, you can not make a decision, but that's basically a decision too, right? That's saying, well, we're okay with what the administration wants to do. And that's a decision, that's a policy decision too. But if you want to make a policy decision, I think that's the kind of information you need. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Herb. And then I see one more hand, Shauna?
Hi there. Yep. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. So one thing that I've been looking through a lot of the past minutes, the last couple of years, and just trying to follow kind of what has happened. I just feel like there is a big disconnect between trying to really get things done with what the community is saying, or even what board members are asking for. It seems like when there's an issue, it almost just gets forgotten. And I am concerned. It feels like there really isn't a desire to connect with the community other than just on a very surface level. But it's just, I feel like you guys need to understand that you guys are supposed to be representing the community and our voices. And it just feels like it's more of a connection with trying to side with the school and the administration versus the actual community. Our voices really just don't feel like they are being heard. And I do think that there should be more, even in meetings, being able to have discussions or have more open comment, because it is something that is really important to be listening to what the community is saying and not just, it just seems like everything is so private and everything is not really left up to us, but it is supposed to be our voice. You guys are supposed to represent us as a community. And I've seen that just based on the minutes from the last 2 years. Every time someone has a concern, it's just, seems like it's just forgotten. So yeah, I just would like to see more openness to the public and really engaging us in what we want and taking that into full consideration. That's all.
Thank you. Okay, all right. Not seeing any more hands. Our next item is an executive session, and then we have our board statement if we decide we have one after that, and then our meeting evaluation and adjourn. So rather than keep the camera around and the note taker around, I think we'll just plan on finishing the end of our meeting ourselves, and we just need the board to go into executive session. So under Title I, VSA 5313A3, evaluation of an employee, specifically the superintendent evaluation, I need a motion to go into executive session at 8:23.
So moved.
Andrew?
Second.
Steve? All right, all those in favor of going into executive session, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, I see a thumbs up. All right, okay. Zoom board members, you have the Zoom link and we'll be there in just a moment.
Excuse me, this is Elizabeth Marr. Can I ask a question? Isn't it on the agenda that there would be a statement? I know I'm kind of out of order here, but isn't there on the agenda a statement that you would then make a comment about your executive session about the superintendent evaluation?
That's what I just mentioned that if we have created one, if we have a statement, it would come out afterwards.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't really hear that part of it.
But I thought I talked over you. I couldn't hear you.
What I said was I didn't hear that part of it.
Oh, okay.
So you'll make, I'm sorry, could you repeat it? That would help me. Just
So
what will you do?
When we finish in the executive session, we'll have to come back into the large cafeteria, and if we have a statement, we'll make it. The last time we didn't have a statement, and we said that in our minutes, it said we didn't have one prepared. And then we would run through our board survey and adjourn the meeting.
Okay, and is a statement made at a later time?
If we have one, it will be captured. Somebody will write it down and send it to the minute taker, who will add it to the minutes, and then it'll be published when the minutes are released.
May I ask?
Not on Zoom, because we're going to tell the camera they can leave, or that Sean can leave now, so there won't be a recording of the remaining portion of the meeting.
Okay, I got that.
Okay?
Okay.
Okay. All right. All right, so we'll move to we can go to the small cafeteria.